Well, good evening, Tiger fans. It is Thursday, December 5th, the day after National Letter of Intent signing date, and we are really excited to have a special guest in this Zoom call, recruiting analyst Danny Heitert, who's a regular every year for us and always gives great insight. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you're on with us live and like to ask a question, just put it on the chat and we will get it with Danny at the end of the evening. Danny, thanks for joining us as always. Let's just jump right in. Tigers have a top 20 recruiting class. What are your thoughts?
Mark, right off the bat, when I saw the list as it came in, I had some observations right away, kind of big picture stuff. And the first observation I had was that, again, they added a strength to an existing strength. And I think it's really going to pay dividends next season for the first time. Because the position that I consider a strength is going to lose all the starters at that position. They're going to no longer be there. So the position, how they strengthen themselves really is over a 4-year period now. 3 years ago, they brought in the historical Luther Burden entry, but Mekhi Miller also came in on that class from Kansas City, Kansas. And he didn't play much that first year, but the second year, he may only have had single-digit catches all year, but they all seemed to be third down conversion and catches where the Barrett Bannister like, where you could tell the staff trusted him on critical downs. And then 2 years ago, they brought in 3 receivers, all good players. They brought in the Bullet Marquise Johnson. They brought in the multi-tool Josh Manning from Kansas City. And from Louisiana, a real playmaker who you haven't seen much of yet, Daniel Blood, a slot guy. Then last year, they further strengthened the position by bringing 2 kids that haven't hit the field yet. But a tall, rangy sprinter named James Madison from Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale, really good player from a national program. And they also brought in from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, Courtney Crutchfield, who is a big, strong, make you miss in open space guy, make yards after contact. And now they've added, I think, 3 more quality players. So the first thing if there's a concern that Mookie Cooper and Luther Burden and Theo Weeks are going to move on, oh Lord, what are we going to do? I think 3 people from that group is going to emerge, and they're going to be fine at that position. If Missouri doesn't present itself with an SEC caliber passing game next year, it won't be because of the receivers, I don't think. So I would expect, if I had to guess who, I'd say Manning's going to emerge. I think Marquise Johnson's going to emerge, and Daniel Blood. I think those people are going to emerge, and maybe others, and you'll be fine at the position. Then another kind of overview thing I saw was at the running back position, where maybe a particular model is emerging that may continue on. And if you look at the last 5 years, how Drinkwitz has utilized running backs. 5 years ago, it was pretty much in 2020, it was a solo act, Larry Roundtree, right, left, up the middle. The following year in 2021, solo act, Tyler Beatty. Then you start to see in that 2022 kind of a duet. You saw Nathan Pete a little and Cody Schrader was starting to emerge a little bit. And then the following year, 2023, you're back to a solo act because Cody emerges and becomes Cody Schrader. Then this year, the 5th year of 5, you see the duet back in play. And a specific type of duet in Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel. You've got kind of a accelerator burst guy, and you got kind of a 4-wheel drive guy in traffic who can make the right cut quickly, make yards after contact, things like that. I see that the 2 runners they're bringing in after they had to replace the flip of Jamarian Morrow from Memphis If he flipped and went to Texas A&M, they brought in two runners that kind of fit that Chevy Corvette and Chevy Blazer model, where it's a duet. And so I can see next year, you could really see Jamal Roberts being that Blazer, Chevy Blazer guy, and Kawan Lacey, who's a true jet. When Lacey will be a real revelation next year. So I think you're going to see this duet of two different types again next year and maybe going forward for a little bit. So that was kind of an interesting trend I thought I saw. And another thing that Missouri had to deal with, and they weren't the only ones out there had to deal with this, but they showed me that their recruiting organization was pretty deft at pivoting when they would lose somebody and somebody would flip that had earlier committed. And in the case of Missouri, what hurt was they did it in the last week, and time's very compressed. And so you have to have options, and you have to be able to know what to do and how to get a good result. Well, Missouri executed, and while I'm really sorry they lost to Lamont Rogers, the offensive tackle for Dallas, he's a great player. And Jamarian Morrow, the running back from Memphis, really good player. I think they pivoted very well when they got the defensive end and they got the two running backs in. I think, they pivoted to quality. And I can think of not too long ago, if Missouri lost some player at the last second, their pivot constituted calling up a kid from Knob Noster who was going to Wyoming and giving him an offer at the last second. So they are pivoting to quality now. And again, I don't want to cry over spilt milk, but the fact that they were with Lamont Rogers to the midnight hour really says something, because this is a guy, he would have been, I think, the best offensive line prospect ever coming in the doors anyway. And what makes him special is he's got a great initial punch, but often when offensive linemen will do what's called, and Missouri does this some in their zone schemes, well, they will have an initial punch and they will tandem or combo off to the second level to get an upright guy. And they call, and usually with an ordinary player, a lineman, that second target punch is just a fraction of a percent of the initial intensity of the punch. Lamont Rogers' second punch is like a Marvel superhero, where the superhero not only smokes the first guy 100%, but he then sprints to the second guy and hits 110%. And so you had a mobile striker there. And they lost him, but you'll see when we talk about the offensive line, they're still in a good place. They lost an excellent runner from Memphis, Tennessee, Jamarian Morrow. I live in the St. Louis area, and people here are all hot and bothered about a Belleville, Illinois, nearby suburb on the east side of the Mississippi, who's going to Oregon. And to me, Jamarian Morrow and him are equivalent. They're very much the same player. Quick, acceleration, change of direction, all that good stuff. So they lost him, but I'm still saying when we get to thumbnails of the kids they've signed, Missouri's in a good place with the runners they've got. So I thought their recruiting organization pivoted really, really well. And one more kind of observation I had overall was the idea of when I saw the list, and I did the film review on all of them, and it's usually a 300 snap minimum of game film that you can buy online, different services, would have wide lens shots of people so you can see coverages and all that. When I saw the list and I did evaluations of the kid, I thought, okay, who are the best players here? If I had to rank them, and I was picking against a Paul Blackman, I picked first, he picked second. Who would I pick? He picked second. Who would I pick third off the list? Things like that. That's simple how I would kind of rank them. And I looked at that list, And I looked at my list of who did I think would play the earliest. There's no overlap. There was one kid that kind of overlapped. When we look at the kids in a second, I think the best guys, if I were to give you the best 5 guys on there who I would pick first, the top 2, and some people would rearrange the order, I think is the St. Louis Eureka offensive lineman, Jack Lang, the best player in Missouri. So I don't concern myself with parochial thinking, oh, the best player on this list that has him from 10 states can't be from Missouri. Why not? I think he is. And I think equal with him, though, is Javian Hilson, the defensive end they brought in at the last second. I think those 2 are the best 2. Now, the reason I'd go with Lang first is, although this is a terrible idea, and it would be a sad state of affairs if it had to happen, I think Lang, as an offensive tackle, would be more ready right now based on what he's done and what his characteristics are and who he's played against already and demonstrated. He would be more ready right now to block an SEC edge player than Hilson, the edge player, would be able to shed the block of an SEC tackle. And so that's why I'd rank him 1, 2. Then I'd take the quarterback, Max Zollers from Pennsylvania. My 4th pick, I'd take Henry Fanuku, the guard from Fort Worth. When we talk about him, he's exceptional. He's exceptional. So 2 of the top 4 players I would take are offensive linemen. So the fact that they lost Lamont Rogers, I regret it, but they're in a good place still. And then I'd take the receiver, Donovan Olugbade. And I saw Donovan play in person over in East St. Louis this year, and that's how he was pronouncing. That's how he said he pronounced the name, Olugbade. Now, who would I think would play most early? Well, it's got nothing to do, surprisingly, it's got something, but not a whole lot to do with what their physical characteristics are, how well their diagnostics are for that specific position. It's got less to do with that than, are they playing at a spot where maybe Missouri is lacking quality depth at that specific position? And are they arriving early enough in the process to start to build their own personal inventory of professionally guided repetitions? So are they going to be there in January to start doing the right things under guided instruction? All the 5 that I think play first are going to be there in January, and they're going to start that process. I think the kid that's got the chance to play first might be the outside linebacker from Ohio, Dante McClellan. If Dalen Cornell breaks his ankle, I'm not sure who plays strong safety. Right now, I just don't know. Maybe it's just ignorance on my part. I just don't know. But I know that Dante McClellan is great in open space, not bad in confined space, makes people miss, got a great burst to the ball, gets people on the ground, he doesn't miss, excellent in zone coverage, excellent, and not bad in man coverage. So maybe circumstances call, not that he's doesn't rank further down on the total list, but he's, because of circumstance, he might get called. The second guy I think might be called to play early is Mark Manfred, the Atlanta cornerback, 6'3", runs like a deer, really covers well. Now, why would he play early? More than most people, I am not down on Missouri's corners. I'm not. I think Deloach, I think both of them do most of the things well. They remind me a bit of Darnell Terrell when he played corner for Missouri. The first thing they got to be able to do is stay stride for stride in the hip pocket of gazelles in the SEC. Our corners can do that. Now, they may get baited up by play action or something like that, but they can run with them. They'll hit. And so I think both our corners are going to emerge further, our second and third corner. So I think, though, that Missouri may be in play to start a corner early playing on third down packages. Missouri on third down packages will go with 3 down linemen in an odd look. They will stack a Tyrone Hopper or a Corey Flagg over the nose, and they will play 7 defensive backs. So there's opportunities there, 2 or 3 defensive backs coming into the game. Well, I like Missouri's defensive backs more than most people do. I think they're going to take a next step next year. But Mark Manfred, the corner from Atlanta, is in a position maybe to help out right away there. I think the wide receiver Oleg Bode from Bradenton, Florida, played for IMG Academy. He reminds me of Bud Sasser. He's not a jet, but he's quick. He's more quick than fast, but he's big and strong, and he's got soft hands until the ball hits him. Then by God, it's his ball. And he makes high degree of difficulty catches routinely. Very strong, a threat after the catch. He is quick. He's fast enough that it's not a problem. Well-trained, excellent routes, things like that. I think maybe third guy, he may be the guy who plays. Then I think because he plays running back, and just like Kwan Lacey this year got some snaps, is the new running back Marquise Davis. I think from Cleveland, Ohio. I think maybe he's got the physique. He's a stout guy. He kind of reminds me already of Marcus Carroll a little bit. He's tough in traffic. He sees things. He makes yards after contact. If he can pass protect, that's the hurdle all these running backs face. You're not going to get in the game. With our head coach, you're not going to get in the game unless you can pass protect. And so Kwan Lacey early got some snaps, but it's almost like raising a banner, say, we're running, because he can't pass block. And you see Jamal Roberts come in because he can pass block, and now you find out he can run a little bit too. So I think maybe because he's a running back and a pretty good one, Marquise Davis, and then all of these guys will be on campus, training, doing reps in January. And the fifth one also, part of the reason why he may play, Charles Bass, the multi-talented, versatile defensive back from East St. Louis. Because he plays at safety, and there are some openings there in the depth chart. And he's a strong physical kid. He's played high competition. I saw him go man-on-man with Olugbade for 4 quarters, and he didn't back off a bit. So my point there was in the overview is who's the best prospects isn't necessarily who's going to play early. So that was kind of my initial instincts on the thing. You want to do a quick thumbnail of the kids?
Sure. Let's go through it. Yep.
The quarterback, Matt Zollers, his high school is 40 miles northwest out of Philly. And it's a 6A high school, and they play 6 classes of competition there. So he plays against big schools, multiple coaching staffs, 2 platoon football, big time players, multiple coverage. So you get to see him really, I got to see him a lot. Now, I don't think he's a guy that comes in and plays right away. I don't. I think that would not be helpful. I think he's got a flaw or two he needs to work on, and Kirby Moore can help him with that. But he probably has got a in the ballpark equivalency arm with Sam Horn. Sam's is a little better at the same stage when he was in Georgia throwing to Travis Hunter. Sam's was a little bigger, but Zollers runs better. And, that's not the name of this game specifically, but if you want to run some, bring him out the back door, zone read stuff or bootleg stuff like that, Zollers be fine there. He really has got a great body torque when he throws. He really generates a lot of miles per hour on his ball because of great body torque. So he makes good decisions. He doesn't throw into tight windows. I've seen him do it a little bit, not usually, but sometimes he's got more faith in his arm than probably merits the circumstance. Now, problems I've seen with him, it's not a huge problem. It can be overcome. He's often inaccurate when he rolls to his left and throws when he's moving to the left. Sometimes when he's at a stationary landmark in a drop back situation or so after a play action, sometimes he overstrides, which causes some inaccuracies. And so those are all correctable things. So I think he's a a good quarterback. I don't think he plays at all in the first year. Then the running backs. Marquise Davis is the midnight hour signing from Cleveland, Ohio. 6 foot, almost 210. Played in a very competitive Cleveland conference in the large school division of Ohio. And what I like about him, and what I'm sure Curtis Luper really likes, is all his energy and all his focus is on north-south. He is so efficient in his wiggle or shake and bake that he's almost absent of those techniques. And so he everything is north-south. So he sees openings, he grabs creases, he hits them, he's fast enough that it's certainly not a problem. I don't think he's an 80-yard guy. I think he's more like a 33-yard guy on a breakout, but that's fine. If he can pass block, he could play early, like I said, and he'll be there in January. The other running back is Brendan Haygood. They got from Saxe, Texas. Again, 6A school in Texas. Watched their film yesterday from a number of games. It's about 25 miles northeast of Dallas. Large school division. What I like about him, he's very patient early in the carry. He's not in a hurry. And so he's using his vision early, wide lens vision. If he sees a crease, even in confined space, he will grab it right now. His feet are very quick, so once he changes speeds, it's a quick giddy up. Really good contact balance, and so did Marquise Davis, by the way. Have really good contact balance. That's a key in football, but in the SEC, contact balance. You know, it's bulls in a china shop all over. So you can't have your pins knocked over if you're going to play running back in that league. Haygood makes yards after contact. His functional strength is pretty good for his size. His speed is not sudden. It's more gradual. And so he's not a Kawan Lacey in that regard. He reminds me, if you want a comparison of these two running backs, I'd say Marquise Davis reminds me of Jamal Roberts at St. Mary's at the same stage. Stout guys, good straight line speed, yards after contact, physical guys. And I think that Haygood reminds me leaner, but his technique is a young Larry Roundtree. Now, Larry Roundtree gained a lot of mass at Missouri, and he became a yards after contact monster. But he started to show those tendencies in high school where he just made yards after contact and was physically tough. And at the time, I thought Larry Roundtree can't exist in the SEC running that way. Wrong, he could. And so Haygood has a little of that in him. So neither one is Jamarian Morrow from Memphis, who went to Texas A&M, but I think they're in good stead with these guys. The receivers, Oleg Bodie Donovan from IMG Academy in Bradenton, 6'2", 195, almost 200. I would say his chief characteristics, excellent ball tracking. He really sees the ball in air and adjusts to it perfectly. His ball skills, tracking and catching, are superior. His hands are aggressive yet soft. He's a functionally strong guy, really strong. He wins the 50-50s. He can make yards after contact. And I said earlier, he reminds me in 2009 when I watched film of Bud Sasser from Ryan High School in Denton, Texas. They have that proactive, that ball is mine in air. It's got my name on it. You don't have a right to it. I do. I'm going to do something about that. I'm going and getting it. And that's kind of what Ola Bodie reminds me of. Then Sean Terry, the second of three receivers they brought in from Ironton High School. He's in Ironton, Ohio, 5A school. It's about 165 miles southeast in Cincinnati. It's right on the Ohio-Kentucky border. He played mid-size competition. So not as good a player as he saw on a regular basis, but he reminds me of Daniel Blood in that he's always in attack mode. He catches the ball and it's like, I'm going to attack and get to the goal line somehow, some way. And he's got a whole set of tools he could he can do to in that regard. Change of direction, contact balance, yards after contact. Very creative in his moves. So his speed is okay. It's not a problem, but it's not great. He doesn't get caught because he weaves. He sees where you're at in pursuit, and he kind of weaves away from you. He makes the perimeter defenders miss him. And then the other receiver is a new guy they got at the last second, Demarion Folks from Baltimore, Maryland. He's actually about 60 miles southwest of Baltimore. Catholic school. It's called, where are you at? Oh, here it is. Good Counsel High School, Olney, Maryland. And he reminds me a lot of Jonathan Johnson when he played for Missouri in 2015. Smallish, but really quick and really good burst linear speed. He's got, of all the receivers I saw this year, his releases off the line of scrimmage may have been the best. He's really hard to get flush hits on the line of scrimmage. He's that quick. His 0 to 60 acceleration is extremely good. He's an excellent punt returner. Makes high degree of difficulty catches. I think people are going to look at both him and Terry early as punt returners. Instead of, say, a Daniel Blood, I think these guys may be a little bit better. Then next is a tight end. Now, if I was ranking all the players, I would have this guy at the last spot, but that's because there's going to have to be some changes to his body's lean muscle mass to be able to really exist and compete well at Southeast Conference. His name's Terrell Dakota. He's 6'8", he's 210. He's from small school, smallest classification in Oklahoma, called Pecola High School. It's on the eastern part of Oklahoma on the Arkansas border. His primary characteristics that I like, though, in spite of being 6'8", he's got a lot of physical characteristics of a smaller receiver, where he can bend, he can change directions easily, he can torque his body, he can make high degree of difficulty catches. And so they list him as a tight end, but he's really lean. Now, he runs very well, but he's playing against marginal competition. And this is going to be a dramatic step change for him. And he's not coming in early, so it's going to, when he gets there in the summer, it'll take him a while to get ready. He reminds me of Kiki Chisholm when he came in from Angelo State in the first year. That's the way Dakota plays the game in high school. He's not a tight end. They split him out. And so he's a big, tall guy. Kiki was split out all the time. And so I think he'll take the longest of anybody to get ready. The offensive line, now, in spite of losing Lamont Rogers, great player, I think their offensive line, their 3 picks, are excellent. I really do. I mentioned the 2 I would put in the top 4 of the entire class. Well, another I had ranked 8th. From Coffeyville, Kansas. So we'll go through them. I think Jack Lang from Eureka High School in West County, St. Louis, I think he's not only the best player in Missouri, I think he's the best player they brought in, period. He's got advanced lateral movement. Now, I remember 2 years ago when Missouri, early in the first 5 games of the season, was seemingly leading the country in tackle for losses. They were so insecure in the A and B gaps between center guard tackle. It was a swinging gait in there, especially on the left side. And often that's got to do with lateral quickness. Jack Lang has lateral quickness to burn. He is unusual. He's 6'8", he's almost 300, he's lean. And literally, think of your zone press in basketball. He could be the lead guy in a zone press where you've got to stay in front of people laterally, quick guards. He could do it. He's that good laterally. And so even they'll change his pull technique when he's in college and Coach Moore gets him. But literally in high school, most linemen, if they're going to pull to the other side of the formation and either kick out on the line of scrimmage or go up to the second level, they will turn their body in the direction they're going to run. He takes a step back from the line of scrimmage and moves laterally so he can see the second level or anybody seeping through, never lose sight of them, and he can stop on a dime while he's moving laterally and go forward and stick whoever needs to be stuck. And so sometimes he never does turn around. He just glides across the other side, pulls up through and smokes people, hits hard targets in open space. I think his potential size is off the charts because he's lean. It's 6'7" or 6'8" right now. Very fluid hips. He arches his back. He's got great leverage underneath. He identifies stunts really well. On pass protection, it won't be the same at Missouri, but he's got all the characteristics you need to succeed at that. And so he'll have some things to learn. That'll be the hurdle to overcome and when he truly is ready. So I think he's an exceptional player, and Missouri got him, and he's an in-state guy. The other guy I thought was like the fourth best kid on the entire list, Henry Fanuku. He's from Ghana originally, but he ends up in Fort Worth, Texas at North Crowley High School. That's the largest level of high school football in Texas, the best. And so one of the things I do when I incorporate kind of a ranking of people, I've always done it differently than other people. I weight different characteristics. Quickness is number one with me. That gets more weight than anything. Then number two is performing a football skill with quickness is number two. Linear burst is probably third. And then number four is size. Only then do I talk about size, and I get the biggest version of the first three characteristics that I weight earlier. I get the biggest version of those I can get, but then I look at competition. And to me, you've met a burden of proof if you've played bigger schools with more athletes that tend to be two platoon. They're repped more. You're seeing more technique conscious people you're playing against. And so it's just a burden of proof that doesn't have to be met with small school players. Not that small school players, because Missouri's got a number of them here that I like a lot, but there is kind of a burden of proof. Henry Fanuku, he's doing it. He reminds me of Xavier Delgado, who when he played in high school in Arizona and he came over to Missouri, he started his junior and senior year, and he was really good his senior year. Fanuku reminds me of Delgado. Well, how is that? Just very versatile, different ways to get to the point of attack, and then once he's to the point of attack, he wins the block. He's got a smoking good initial punch. He's quick, he's fluid, he's athletic. He almost never false steps, very efficient. Laterally, he's very good, not as good as Lang, but he's still really, really good. He swivels, he pivots easily. So his functional strength is excellent. I just like him a whole lot. The third guy they got from Coffeyville, Kansas, name is Keaton Jones. He's 6'5". He's not quite 300. He's kind of a versatile guy that can go inside or outside. Played against inferior competition, mid-sized Kansas high school football. It wasn't the best, but that's not his fault, but I have to take that into account. I think what I like about him is his initial punch. His initial punch is actually the best of the three, which is often where if you're going to lose, that's where you're going to lose early. If the DT or the DN can shock you and helmet smoke you and punch you first, usually that guy is going to end up winning and provided he does the other things right. Well, Keaton Jones' initial punch is really good. Reminds me of Trevor Sims, who played guard for East St. Louis 5-6 years ago. Has that kind of initial punch. Only this guy's a little bit more athletic. This guy is really a good athlete. He played strong offensive tackle. He could probably move inside at the college level. His functional strength, I think, is advanced. His feet are really good. He's a tenacious guy. He really competes hard. He gets a lot of knockdowns. His highlights, if you look at his highlights, that's why I go to other stuff. His highlights are just him knocking people down. So that's why you got to go look at other longer film games in context. His bend, he could do better on that. Laterally, he's very good. So that's the offensive side. I think the offensive side, they really did well. On the defensive side, this is a small school guy I like a lot. His name is Jason Dowell. He's a defensive tackle for Belleville-Althoff, who just won the 1A state title in Illinois last week. He's also the defending state champion at 285-pound weight wrestling, state champion. He is really an interesting guy. He can bend and torque and play with leverage. He's got excellent off-the-snap quickness. I think he could be on that next list of people who maybe not a great idea, but could exist playing early. If he were playing for Blake Baker, who used Josh Landry and George Rayless as defensive tackles and gap step them and move them all the time and use their quickness and got them through a gap and let them play ball once they got there, this kid could do that. My comparison would be C.J. Mosley at Waynesville 25 years ago, 2001. But I saw Mosley, who was a heavyweight wrestler at Waynesville. I saw a lot of Mosley in those days, and they're very similar. So he's a Jason Dowell, 6'3", 285, very quick, very agile, good initial punch, leverage. He's got some flaws in his technique. He lets go of people after making initial contact, only to have to reattach later. He should have never given it up in the first place. But I like him a lot, although he didn't play strong competition. Their other defensive lineman is an edge guy. It's Javian Hilson, who they got in the last 48 hours from Cocoa High School in Cocoa, Florida, on about 45 miles, and maybe not that far. Probably, about 45 miles east of Orlando on the Atlantic side. Now, Javian played against one of the smaller classes, 2A in Florida. Didn't see a lot of great tackles, but I'm not holding that against him. He's so dominant. By the way, he's 6'5", 235. If you want a comparison, at the same stage of development, not how they end up, but when I say a comparison, the guy I compare to is what this guy looked like when he was coming out of high school as a senior, coming into college, is Alden Smith at Raytown. Looked just like Javian Hilson coming in at this point. Hilson's really quick off the ball. Even though he's 6'5", his pads are low, his knees are bent. He's got long arms even for 6'5", and here's where it's kind of misleading, because he gets those arms out as levers, and the offensive tackle can never get his mass into his torso. And so he disconnects from him almost at will, and then he sprints and closes to the ball really well. And he got a revved motor. He never lets up. Plays hard every down, pursues hard. He sheds blocks at that 2A level in Florida instantly. So my guess is he lines up on Jack Lang or Keaton Jones or some of those guys, is going to be an adjustment period. But he's a major talent, size, speed, defensive end. The other defensive end they brought in is a small school mid-Missouri guy, Danny Hopkins. Now, I've seen him quite a bit, stood next to him a number of times. He's all of 6'6". He's probably 220-ish, mid-220s. I think of all the defensive ends that Drinkowitz has brought in, I think Danny Hopkins is the quickest. He is lightning quick, and he plays against 2A and 3A offensive tackles in Missouri, so that's not great. And sometimes he's got bad habits, because he can literally, if he chooses to, he can literally, on almost any given play, be untouched. He could get out of a game with minimum contact, nary a bruise, if that's the way he chooses to do it. Now, he'd have to take a side to do that, but instead of playing into somebody, that's how fast he is. So his pass rush, he literally dips his shoulder, gets around a bend instantly. And he's a excellent basketball player. I saw him play basketball, and he's really quick off the floor. So if you're a high school guard and you're thinking about, and you're in Gasconade County or any of the counties in mid-Missouri, and you're thinking about coming down the lane for a layup, if you're playing against Dayton Hopkins, it'll never happen. And by the way, the tight end, Dakota, from small school in Oklahoma, same deal. I watched some basketball film of him, same deal, quick off the floor. These are two great shot blockers. So he's a raw material. Obviously, he's got to get bigger, stronger at the point of attack to anchor in there against offensive tackles. That's going to take a while to do that, but he is really an interesting guy. Dayton Hopkins, 6'6", 225. Then the linebackers, Dante McClellan, he was the guy I thought had the chance to play maybe earliest. He's an outside linebacker there, McKinley High School, Canton, Ohio, mid-sized competition in Ohio. It's good competition, but it's mid-sized, it's not the best. Now, Canton's about 160 miles south of Cleveland. I think that the best thing he does is his versatility. He's really good in open space and not bad in confined space. He really diagnoses well, gets good break on the ball. He sees backfield flow, and after 2 steps, he sees backfield flow, and based on diagnostics and scouting, he beats the ball to its intended point of attack. He gets there first, and then he blows things up. He's really good in coverage. I like him a great deal, and because, again, I think he plays at a position of quality depth as needed, maybe he plays earlier than anybody expects. He's Dante McClellan, and he's from Ohio. They also brought in St. Louisan from DeSmet High School, who's playing in the state championship Friday night against Nixa, Jason King. He is also an outside linebacker, but in a lot of adjustments, he'll go inside, and he can do either. He plays really fast, and he's a striker. So, his clock time is about 4.6 and 40 yards. He plays at least that fast, if not faster to me. And again, DeSmet is a large school. They play in a good private school league with large schools, and then they travel to play teams like East St. Louis or IMG Academy from Brayton, Florida. They try to get a couple other good teams, and Rockhurst from Kansas City. So good competition. I think the guy he reminds me the most of is Kendall Brothers from Guthrie, Oklahoma, when he came out. Very similar guys to me. So I like Jason King from DeSmet quite a bit. Defensive backs, they brought in a very versatile guy from East St. Louis, Charles Bass. He's 6'1", 194, and I saw this twice this year and a couple times last year with Charles. In one single given series, first down, second down, third down. On first down, Charles is 6'1", 195. Well put together. On first down, he'd line up as a strong safety. So tight end there, or imaginary tight end, go 4 yards outside of that tight end and 4 yards deep, strong safety territory. He'd play kind of second level edge guy on first down. Second down, he would move back 10 to 12 yards deep and play on the hash mark and play a free safety, cover half the field. On third down, if it was a long yardage, whoever the primary receiver that needed to be neutralized on the opponent offense, he would lock up man on him. And so all three positions, he plays in a very similar way, real aggressive, real strong, real competitive, real athletic. So he's very versatile. So if Missouri has need at safety, he could do it. But again, just like I mentioned, Dante McClellan, Charles Bass is another guy that could play on the second level off the edge and do just fine. And he's going to be there in January. So I included him with guys who have a shot to play early. And then the last guy is a true cornerback, Mark Manfred. And I thought he'd be the second most likely guy to maybe play. I really like this guy a lot. Mark is a 6'3", 180. He's from Marietta, Georgia. They played at 5A level out of 6, but I looked at enough games. Good, very good competition. He's a long guy, very athletic, runs super well coached, nice man technique. He'll change his alignment prior to snap. Sometimes he'll come up hard. Sometimes he'll line up hard and soften right prior to snap. His diagnostics in zone are really good. He sees pattern combinations and breaks on them real well. Fluid, stays on his feet. He gets people to the ground, but he's got a little bit of Marvin Burks in him in that he doesn't know that he can use his arms to tackle. And so that doesn't work every time. And so Manfred's got a little bit of that I think should be worked on a little bit. So I like him quite a bit. And again, why would he play early? Maybe because Missouri likes these dime packages, and they like 6 and 7 D-backs. And while I do like their D-backs returning, I know a lot of people don't, I do. I could see Manfred having the man skills or simple zone to be able to go out there and give a good account of himself. So that's kind of the class as I see it, Mark.
Mark, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. Danny, thank you. You make this the easiest interview I ever do. If anybody has a question, put it in the chat. Danny, I do have one question. Missouri signed 3 kids in state. What was your overall assessment of the talent in the state of Missouri this year?
It's going to be this way again next year. I think at the top end, really, really good. But after you get to a half dozen, there's a fairly dramatic drop off. Now, things go in cycles. Typically Missouri is going to have Power 4 conference guys. You're going to see anywhere from could be as many as 10 down to 3. And then, beyond Power 4 Division I guys, you could see another 10 to 12 more. Mid-America Conference guys, WAC Conference guys. And so, you'll end up with people at the Division I level, FCS, BCS probably anywhere from 1 at a minimum to 6 to 8 at the top, BCS guys, and then FCS guys add another dozen or so. And so your question was how was it this year quality? I'd say at the top end, that top 6 or so, really, really good. And I think, but quality drops off after that. Next year, you'll have possibly the best offensive line prospect ever to come out of Missouri, Jackson Cantwell, come out. And then there's some really nice players right after it. Des Walker from Rapec is kind of reminds me of Aeneas Williams from Hannibal last year that's on Notre Dame's roster right now. Does everything well, Des Walker. Then from DeSmet, Titan Davis is a 6'4", 265 edge guy that's really, really good. And oh, by the way, I don't get a cut of the Missouri State High School Activity Association streaming. I don't get any bit of it. But tomorrow night, Nix's Cantwell Jackson will line up at right tackle. Titan Davis, my current 3-rank guy, will line up at left defensive end. Jackson Cantwell has punched a hole through every front, every snap, bar none. Titan Davis can sit in there with him and anchor a little bit. So a lot of times Nixa will block inside and so-called veer blocking. Well, they will wall off inside and try to kick that defensive edge guy out. But on those base block, man-on-man type of situations, that would be the price worth of streaming admission to see Nix's offensive tackle, an all-time great, in my opinion, against a really quality edge player. Probably the best either of them have faced in their life, and they'll face each other tomorrow night.
Got a question from Jason Wright. Based on how the roster is constructed, what positions do you see Missouri prioritizing in the transfer portal?
Well, the obvious one is quarterback. If on quarterback, if let's say they don't get a difference maker, I hope they do. Maybe they will. But let's say it's not somebody that's obviously better than in-house, and your choices were Sam Horn and our guy came in so well against losing our second team guy's name.
No, Drew Pine.
Drew Pine. And then you have true freshman, going to be a sophomore, scholarship guy come in. He's only about 6 foot though. Once I saw him in person, the literature was lying about him being 6'2". He's not. So you've got two smaller guys who center push the pocket. If defensive tackles push that pocket, your sight lines are forever going to be blurred. It's going to be a struggle all the time. To me, I know people haven't seen Horn in a long time, but I know what I saw when he was playing in Atlanta, and he was a major talent. He's got a great arm. Now, by osmosis, he's taken in a lot over the years. I know he hasn't been out there much at all. I realize that. But if that's the way you had to go, if it caused a reapportion of player share revenue or NIL to make sure he's there, that may be the best of some bad options. But the obvious answer is a difference-making quarterback. My preference is one who can run. It just seems odd that South Carolina can come up with Sellers and Texas A&M can come up with Reed and Vandy everybody can come up, Boston College, with a quarterback who can scoot. And so, why can't Missouri get one of those? Then my second priority would be, and it's just probably because I don't know and I haven't seen practices, but I worry about them losing all their inside linebacking. They've lost it all. Now, they believe Beasley's a player. Nick Rodriguez played a lot as a true freshman. I really liked him at Thomas Aquinas. I really thought he was a really good player. But my second priority would be linebackers, a bunch of them. Then I would want offensive tackles third. Now, if Armand Membo comes back, that's good. They brought in a junior college guy I really liked last year who didn't see the field much at all, offensive guard or tackle. I'd like to see what he can do. But Mitch Walters has really come further than I thought he was going to come. Because when I talked about tackles for losses and inside gap security at guard, he was being beat right left 2 years ago. I mean, it was not a good thing to see, but he's really come a long way. I'll give him credit for that. But to answer the question, I'd want 2 tackles, I'd want 2 linebackers, and then I'd want a quarterback.
You obviously spent a lot of time analyzing high school kids with the transfer portal kicking in. What will be your activities over the coming weeks with that?
Well, I won't do anything on the transfer portal until they've committed to Missouri and they've transferred. And it's because if you try to be proactive on the front end, it's just it costs a lot of time to do it. I'm not going to off the cuff give an opinion of somebody, or I'll really qualify it if I'm saying, look, here's what I've seen. But my minimum amount of quality snaps has to be 300. That's 5 or 6 games worth. If there's 60 snaps in a game for your your side of the ball on defense or offense as an average, I need to see 5 times 60 minimum to have a really solid opinion. So before I do that and spend the money and take the time, I want to make sure they're coming in. So once they come in, I'll look at all those guys.
If you look at the kids, you mentioned the two kids that Missouri lost, and they're in your profile sheet. On the in-state kids they missed, who would have been the one you'd wanted the most?
I think Dylan Duff, the quarterback that's going to Kansas State,
Okay.
I think he's got a lot going for him. Matt Zollers is fine. Dylan Duff, it had been. I probably go with Matt Zollers, but Dylan Duff would have been nice. In Kansas City, I'm not sure why Missouri didn't like Kamari Moore at Lutheran at Lee Summit North. He's short. He's 6'1", but he's 285, and he's an explosive guy with a rev motor, and he's hard to block. So if you're looking, Missouri this year with Corey Batoon had a different type of interior. They had McClellan, they had Chris Williams, they had some big guys in there. Marcel Gracial, all these guys are 290 to 310. And so they sat and did read technique quite a bit. And you get a lot better pursuit out of read technique. If you're stunting and they come the way you're stunning, you're in great position to make a play. But if the ball moves away from where you're stunning, you're lost in pursuit. And so you're not going to be a factor. Now you're missing that player on defense. And so there's some advantages to playing read technique, and that's what Missouri did a lot of this year. So Kamari Moore, to me, is a great stunt guy. He's kind of like the guy Missouri is bringing in, Jason Dowell from Belleville-Althoff this year. And I really liked him. I thought I would like to have him. I'm not sure they had as high opinion of him as I did. Those are two to come to mind right away.
Last question. Tigers finished 9-3. They missed out on the playoff. Still a pretty good season. Your overall assessment of the 2024 Tigers?
Well, I'm realistic, and I have no bone to pick with anybody that says opportunity lost. We've got you don't know how often you're going to be in this position to have a schedule like that, to have, seemingly you went into it with Texas A&M on a decline. Well, that wasn't right. South Carolina jumped up and was way more competitive with that quarterback Sellers than anybody thought. Their defensive front all of a sudden emerged. And so they were a sleeping giant who played well this year. So under the circumstances, I think you have a coach whose strengths really align well with the football ecosphere right now. I'd want a guy. Here's the kind of guy I would want. I would want a guy who was similar to, say, who was the University of Houston coach that had Clyde Drexler and Phi Slamma Jamma.
Guy Lewis.
Guy Lewis. Now,
Yeah.
they criticized Guy Lewis as a non-XO guy, but boy, could he recruit. Same with Calipari at Memphis and Kentucky. Bad XO guy, but boy, he brought the players in. So I want a guy who can bring the players in, and I'll hire the X and O guy. I want those players. And Coach Drinkowitz really seems to have a handle on the financial aspects of this game, how it's moved. He doesn't bemoan the new, these not like the good old day, the old days when we did it this certain way. It's like, okay, this is what it is. Let's pivot, let's adapt, and let's be better than anybody else. Let's adapt faster and better. And so I think he's the right coach. And so I am pleased with the season.
All right. I am too. I don't think we can ever complain about 9-3. So Danny, thank you very much. This is always one of the true highlights of the year for the Tiger Club. We really appreciate your time. And again, everybody, the Danny sent out his thumbnail sketches as an attachment to the invitation. Goes into a lot more detail. Danny, you're the best. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you, Mark, but I want to thank Darren Whittick and Paul Blackman for kind of setting me up and guiding us through this and getting me there. So I'm always happy to do this, and I wish you well, folks.
All right. Thanks, Danny. Darren, thank you for setting all this up. Appreciate everybody watching, whether in person or whether live or on YouTube. And again, if you're watching on social media, make sure you like us. Our next meeting will be Tuesday at the Westport Flea Market. Our guest will be Dave Matter. I mean, Dave covered the Tigers for years for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and now works in communications for the athletic department. So come and join us at the flea market. And for information on membership and other activities, check us up out on kctigerclub.com. Everybody have a great evening and happy holidays. Take care.